Deep in the most southern part of California, located in the small town of Nyland, lies the Nyland Ranch Wildlife Habitat, a once prosperous sanctuary for the surrounding waterfowl and other wildlife native to the Imperial Valley Salton Sea area, devastated by the June 28, 2020 Nyland fires. Here resides Dr. Barnacle S. Luffy, an ex-serviceman during the Vietnam War, and his wife Satya. Together, they attempt to rebuild and regain what was once lost. And many of the wildlife are beginning to return.
This property back in the 30s was a bait farm for the Salton Sea, the ponds in the back. And then since we owned the property, we've added ponds. And my wife brought the Cambodian water lily seeds from Cambodia. I was raised in Napa. My father was a veterinarian in Napa, had a clinic and a 7-bedroom ranch home in Napa on Silverado Trail. And then they had a flood in, I think, around 1986, that wiped out the house and the clinic. When I first came here, it was in the winter, and it was gorgeous. You know, up in Napa, it was raining and cold and everything, and it was just gorgeous here. I thought, oh, man, this is cool. So when I moved here, my first summer was 129 degrees. And I thought my dad was trying to get back at me for everything I'd done wrong as a kid. You know, I thought, geez, because it was just torture for me. I acclimated. And then I bought a house in Palm Desert, and I was really, really happy there. Then my father passed away in 2000. And I couldn't manage both properties and they were just vandalizing this place for, you know, absolutely no reason. Just come on and just tear it apart, you know. So because my father's ashes and my grandmother's ashes and my son's ashes are here, I don't want to sell it. And I'm a tree hugger, so most of the mature trees here are in Las Vegas. They dug them up and they took them to Las Vegas for landscaping because the Washingtona have the great big trunks and only grow to about 30 or 40 feet. But I wouldn't let them take any more. So that's why this property has 500 palm trees. And if you look around, there's very few anyplace else, you know. When I first got here, we had a lot of gnats, black gnats, and so I did some research and found out that their predator was a hummingbird. So I decided to start feeding hummingbirds to get the gnat population down. And after the hummingbird, then I decided to make it a certified, you know, get it as a certified wildlife habitat. And as it worked out, it was already a natural habitat because the farmland has encroached on all of the wildlife's territory. They have a very small place to have their young. And it turns out over the years, they kind of migrated here. They you know, they have maybe a 10-mile territory, but they come here to have their young because they know it's kind of in their DNA. They know it's safe. So I don't know, I've gone through 4 or 5 generations of bobcats, and I have one favorite one called Sir Lancelot, and he was on the other side of the fence, and my wife, we heard him kind of growl, you know, and my wife went to pick him up. He was just a baby, and I said, wait a minute, that's a bobcat. You don't want to pick him up. So we made a hole in the fence so that he could climb through. And they're not afraid of water at all because muskrats are their favorite food. So he walked right through the canal and then went and sat on her foot. And I said, well, I guess he's not afraid of you, you know. So we picked him up and took some pictures. Because my wife's Buddhist, she won't let me kill anything. you know, it's just bad karma for at my age to kill anything. It's part of the. So that went hand in hand. We don't kill everybody, you know, even the rabbits, even if they eat her lettuce, they're allowed to eat the lettuce. We cohabitate with nature. No animals are caged. You know, some people say, "Oh, you have a wallet." No animals are caged. And I really kind of discourage visitors, you know, because the animals are pretty timid because of all the hunters. You know, the young kids that are learning how to dove hunt and stuff, they haven't learned about hunting yet, so they'll shoot anything that moves, you know. So I was working at my computer and the power went out. So I went outside to see what was going on, and there was the huge fire right next door going straight up, you know, almost like a cyclone, you know. And it was just 2 properties over, and I thought, oh, this is way too close. And my wife is just terrified of fire because of her experience as a child during the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia. And so she's just been terrified of fire ever since, you know. So, and I was a prepper. I had a Gordy tent and food and medicine and everything ready for an emergency, but I had never counted on her having a panic attack. And she started to have a panic attack, and I could see her heart beating under her clavicle, and it scared me to death because she's everything to me. So I just said, honey, calm down. We're leaving right now. We're leaving right now. And we went and got the 2 goats and drug them by their horns off the property and stayed in the field at night over here while the town burned down. And it was a real bummer because we lost a lot of antiques. I had a lot of art because I had pretty much become a recluse. I was a very happy recluse. You know, I had all my own projects. I was interested in science and hydrogen. And the fire completely changed all that. You know, I had kind of lost my faith in humanity, and I was shown so much kindness by a number of people after the fire in the Imperial Valley that I said, wow. You know, it opened up another 5 degrees of my reality, you know, that I had been blocking out, I guess. And so I've become more willing to be more social than ever before. You know, prior to the fire, this would never happen, not in a million years, you know. So, and here I am giving you an interview.
Yeah.
My wife and her sister and myself have worked very hard this last year cleaning up the property. I especially because my father was a veterinarian, I was raised that the animals come first. So we have 1/3 of the property cleaned up now, and the animals are returning. And that became our focus rather than being focused on building the house again. You know, we've kind of put the house on the back burner while we're trying to get the property cleaned back up so that the animals can return and have their young. You know, to us that's what it's all about. So we do have plans for a new house, but like I said, it's on the back burner. The property, cleaning up the property so that the animals can return is our first priority. The other thing is life is very different in a cage than if you're, you know, in wildlife. And I think, and the DNA reflects that, you know, our DNA changes. So it's really not wildlife if it's in a cage. You know, it's a species in a cage. It's not wildlife. So if they can freely come and go, then it's really wildlife. Their DNA and that stuff continues, you know. As a young man, one time I saw a peacock. I saw a goose go through his territory. He has, peacocks have about a 4-foot territory in front of them during the mating season, and nothing can go through it. And this goose went through it, and he jumped up in the air and spurred it in the temple and killed it instantly. And I thought, how in the heck did he know how to kill that goose? For millions of years, this has had to go on so that it's part of his, part of his DNA, part of the inborn knowledge. So, so there's a lot of things, if you see, you can learn a lot from nature and wildlife. They can teach you a lot of stuff, And and because people have just gotten totally away from nature, everybody's on their phone. Very few people are social, and they're definitely not social with the animals or anything. Depending on where you're at and who you are, you can actually probably have telepathy with animals. I'm sure that the Aborigine in Australia, can communicate with animals. And the Montagnards of Vietnam were totally, very, very spiritual, very in touch with Mother Earth. And unfortunately, the more powerful people wipe out those kind of people. So it's cyclic. We go through periods where we go away from God and we get into science, and all of a sudden we come, oh, God's not such a bad thing. We come back and, oh, wow, nature, what's that? Oh, damn, you mean we killed off all these animals? When one of the first people that I made friends with didn't speak any English, one of the Zendejas brothers, Raul, died, but a dear friend of mine. And he said that back in the 30s, Nylon was happening. There were 3 banks, 7 bars. People were making hundreds of thousands of dollars on tomatoes and stuff. People partied every weekend. I mean, it was a happening place. And every time the train went by, flocks of birds went up. Well, in my time here, I've watched the dove population absolutely decimated. There was one year that there was 100 every 100 feet, and they didn't recover from that year. They didn't make it. There used to be a lot of Mexican dove, and now the only things left is ringtail dove because they don't taste good, so that they don't shoot them. I've had one spiritual awakening where I absolutely believe there is a God. I am not really religious. I believe in a lot of the Buddhist tenets, like my wife, but if you tried to hurt my wife, I'd clean your clock. So that makes me a very poor Buddhist. But I truly believe that what you think you create. And so it's good to hold on to, envision good. What is our reality is what we don't filter out. Our brains filter out 80% of the stimulus that comes into our brain through our eyes and our ears and our skin and all our sensory stuff. So our reality is what we don't filter out. Okay, in my case, because I had lost faith in people, I started filtering out the good people. I just simply didn't see them anymore, because I had lost faith. And then that faith was restored after I met John and a number of other people in the valley. And so then I quit filtering that out. I started seeing more and more people like you and Ryan. And so my life has completely changed since the fire. And it's probably, I only opened up my vision 5 degrees out of the 360, but it's made a huge difference. So I'm really, really big on positive thinking, and that's why we had the party. And I want the party to kind of return hope and positive thinking. Well, things are going to work out,